Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage, where Michael K. Vaughan and I talk about comic books once a week. We have both wasted a large percentage of our lives on comic books, and we started out talking about Marvel comics, specifically Marvel's Epic Collection, their paperback full-color reprint line. Lots and lots of good stuff. You really get your money's worth in an Epic Collection reprint. And I think Michael is a Marvel baby. I think he was largely imprinted with Marvel Comics, so it was sort of a home court advantage. I've read Marvel Comics literally from their beginning, but I've never been as big a fan of them as I have been of their rivals, DC Comics, the home of real superheroes like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. And so I was very happy with Michael's decision to broaden our horizons, so we're not just talking about Marvel Comics anymore. We will, the heart and soul of this little world's finest duo will always be the Epic Collections. And we have a lot more of those to go through. But we are, for the nonce, talking about DC Comics. We started last time, the last two times. First with our sort of an autobiographical overview of our connection with DC Comics, and then with the Legion of Superheroes. A great, sprawling team of superpowered, gorgeous teenagers 1,000 years in the future. I loved it. The Legion of Superheroes is the heart and soul of my comic book love. And so when it came time for Michael to pick what we were doing this week, I Voxered him and said, well, I can't wait to find out what era of the Legion we'll be discussing this time around. There's so many good eras we have to talk about. And he wrote back and said, well, you do know we're not going to talk about the Legion every week. So instead, this week we're going to talk about the Justice League of America, which was a radical departure on the part of DC Comics. They had the very first super team of them all, the Justice Society of America, during World War II. That was nominally a team of all of their heroes, all of their superheroes, the better-known ones and the worst-known ones, the better-selling ones and the worst-selling ones, teaming up. It wasn't always that. It wasn't even usually that. Usually Justice Society issues, and wherever they occurred, there was some big mystery. The team would get together to discuss the mystery, and then they would break off individually to have individual adventures. That was one weakness, is that you never really often saw them working together. Another big weakness is that for whatever reason, maybe to boost the sales of all the comics in which those other heroes were appearing, but for whatever reason, the powers that be decided that Superman and Batman would not be regular members of the Justice Society of America. The publishers at DC relaunched the idea of a superhero team with the Justice League of America and thought at first that they would follow that same rationale. The original appearances of the Justice League, here's one from Justice League of America number 15, very conspicuously lack Superman and Batman on the cover and usually in the action, a large part of the action. The editors here thought, well, we'll do this, but it'll be mainly these other heroes. Batman and Superman each have 3 comics of their own. They don't need any more. We'll give these heroes their time in the limelight. That quickly got reconsidered. The core of the Justice League is the 7 great DC superheroes. 6 of whom you know, and 1 of whom you don't. Martian Manhunter just never caught on, in my opinion, as I've been saying for decades now. Mainly because of his dumb name. It's a mouthful, it's ridiculous. If he'd just been called the Martian, he would have caught on. And maybe if he weren't so all-powerful, he has a million different superpowers. He can change shape, he can read minds, he can turn invisible, he can fly, he has super strength, he has elastic ability, stretching ability, all that sort of stuff. But aside from him, you have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, the absolute trinity of comic book superheroes. You cannot have a believable Justice League team without those 3. Any more than you can have a good iteration of the Avengers without Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. You can't do it. Each house has a trinity. You have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and then you have the Flash, you have Green Lantern, you have the Martian Manhunter, and Aquaman, who is a huge superstar now and has... See, I've been having these opinions for decades. Decades and decades ago, I said, and maybe wrote to DC Comics, number 1, you need to change the Martian Manhunter's name. Regularize his power set and change his name. And give him some great villains, and you will do just fine. You will do just fine. You have to change him just a bit. Martian Manhunter is the last survivor of the planet Mars. We know now there has never been any technological life on Mars. But not only that, he has too many superpowers. And his vulnerability is fire. That's not the same thing as kryptonite. That's fire. That means that a well-trained Boy Scout can defeat him. That should change. That should completely change. What kind of sentient being has that as a biological weakness? It's obviously a psychological weakness. That tack is actually taken by Grant Morrison decades later. This is obviously a psychological weakness and not a physical one. The writers of DC Comics should have understood that years and years ago. Change his power set, regularize him, give him some great villains, and change his name. And you'll have the seventh member of this team will be as popular as all the others. And maybe that boy from small town Iowa was also writing irate letters to DC at the same time, saying that in addition to that, the other thing you have to do is power upgrade Aquaman. he can't just be a normal guy who talks to fish and can breathe underwater. Otherwise, he's a huge weak spot for the team. Now, you might say, well, what about Batman? Batman can't even talk to fish. He can't breathe underwater. He's just a guy in a costume. But Batman's always been Batman. Batman is never a weak link for any team. But Aquaman, for the first 40 years that he existed, was very much so. I very much applauded the fact that he's been raised to the status of a major league player. It took $1 billion movie to do. But I'll take whatever happens that way. In these issues, that is not true. In these issues, Aquaman can talk to fish, and he can breathe underwater, and that's it. He's no stronger than a normal man. He's no more clever. He doesn't have anything like a personality. That's just the way he is. Any real iteration of the Justice League will have those 7. You can add others. You can add also-rans like Black Canary or Green Arrow or the Atom or the Elongated Man or whatever, but you've got to have that core. And most of these issues do. The issues that we're talking about today are the Silver Age, the so-called Silver Age of the Justice League. I had to look this up, and it's from roughly the mid-60s to roughly the mid-80s, or early 80s. And the early part of that spectrum is when I started reading Justice League. I started reading Justice League of America when Justice League of America started. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. These are written by Gardner Fox, who's an old-style D-rank science fiction hack of the first water. And you give him a day and you tell him, we need an interesting plot with a gimmick and a twist at the end. He'll have it for you. No matter how many times you ask, no matter how many people ask, he'll have it for you. He's totally reliable. And he's matched on most of these early issues by the artist Mike Sekowski, who is very, very good. He's underrated. He's actually, you can see that he's really, really good. Cover design, the breathing of the panels on a page, they're not all the same. They don't clash with each other. They flow and they work really well. His mastery of drawing the real world and also of perspective, these things get overlooked in a superhero comic because you're dealing with special effects and superpowers and whatnot. But he's really good at them. And he's also really good at drawing individual faces. He absolutely does not do that with superheroes. Because at the early years of the Justice League in the 1960s, in the early 1960s, superheroes weren't individuals. Thank God they weren't. So what Sekowski really does in his run on Justice League is draw costumes that are moving around. There's precious little to distinguish his Wonder Woman from his Aquaman in terms of anatomy. And that's just as well. I don't want to look at a Justice League adventure and think about Green Lantern's abs. I don't want to think about them. And once Neil Adams got his hands on drawing Green Lantern, there's precious little else you can think about except his abs. I don't want a Justice League in which the members hate each other. Or some members hate other members. I don't want a Justice League in which every other member has at one point in recent continuity murdered some other member of the Justice League and they just have to get over it. I don't want a Justice League in which one or another member are secretly plotting on different ways to kill everyone else on the team. I don't want the team bringing their personalities to saving the world because I don't want them to have personalities. I don't want them to have personalities. I want them to have colorful adventures. That's what I want. And they do. In these early issues, they do. The Michael holds up a gigantic omnibus, 2 of them, actually. And I have to admit, later incarnations of the Justice League, some of them, like the tail end of the Silver Age, in my opinion, the artwork lessens, but the writing changes and it becomes more personality-driven. Personalities start to enter into the book, and they became very popular thanks to Marvel Comics. we'll never go back to comics making sense to me. Why do I want my superheroes to have neuroses? Why do I want them to have seething resentments for each other in addition to having seething resentments for Gorilla Grodd? I don't. I don't want them to have those things. But we're never going to go back to that. And I have to admit that some of those later, there are some runs in some of the big omnibus editions that Michael held up in his video. I'll leave a link to his video down below. Some of the storylines, the later storylines, are really good. They're really good. Even though they're not my kind of Justice League, they're still really good. But these early ones are wonderful because they're pure Gardner Fox. You don't know what you're going to get. This one, for instance, you can see on the cover. It's a giant, monstrous being. But although he can grab our heroes, they can't affect him. They can't touch him at all. How are you going to beat a villain if he can touch you and you can't touch him? And that's it. That's all. It's not, how are you going to beat a villain if he can touch you and you can't touch him? And which of your secret identity, real world loved ones is he going to rape if you don't come up with the reason why? And if he gets his way, then this whole plane of reality, not just this in reality, but all the connected ones for 1,000,000 different Earths, all die in torment and fire forever. It's not that. It's not anything about that. It's just that gimmick. How are you going to beat him if he can touch you and you can't touch him? That's all. Just that. And it was wonderful. For your 12 cents, it was wonderful. I want to show you some examples. Here, for instance, there's an experimental space station. And reporting on the space station is reporter Clark Kent. And attending is Diana Prince in her military guise. And when the ship is struck, look what Mike Sekowski is doing there. Look at the chaos on that bottom panel that is not caused by any kind of rabid visual effect. Instead, it's just where he puts people that shows the chaos. People start falling out of this space station, and you can see them in the distance falling. Superman has to deal with the station. He asked Wonder Woman to deal with the humans to save their lives. Look at how far away from her they are. And that happens again. Like for instance, later on in this issue, a crisis strikes an office building, and the Flash has to evacuate everybody. And he does. See this panel? He is racing towards the building. We're just below his level. Then we get him running through the building, and we're just at his level. And then again, very effectively, he's getting the last person out just at the last minute, and we're directly on his level. That is well done. The leg, it would never look that way if you were actually running, but to have it look that way really accentuates the speed lines. It's very well done. These panels are very well done. There's another example that I want to show you. I think it's from the next issue. Yes, see, these issues follow the pattern of the old Justice Society in that they tend to break the team up. As you pretty much have to. If your team is this powerful, you pretty much have to break them up. And also these issues have little science breaks. What starts fires? What's your aorta like? Little pieces of science for little preteen boys to get them interested in the outside world. Little educational bits in addition to the fantastic story. See, they're our strange universe. And of course, at the time that this was made in 1961, no one had any idea how strange the universe was. Yeah, the next one is about a villain whose music causes our heroes to dance involuntarily. And when they break the spell, Wonder Woman is with Green Arrow and the Atom. Green Arrow's ability is that he can use a bow and arrow. And the Atom's ability is that he can get so small you barely know he's there. He's a great hero, absolutely. But when they break the spell, the robbers are getting away, and Wonder Woman says, "Leave these crooks to me, boys." Of course, they couldn't do anything about a runaway sedan. But notice Sekowski makes the car a challenging distance away. You can see Wonder Woman's speed here without having to be hit over the head with it. You can see what she's about to do. And she chases the car and then stops it with brute strength. And that's another thing that runs throughout these early issues, is that Wonder Woman is a bit of an anomaly. She's always been for the Justice League. All of the members of the Justice League have some emblematic weakness of some kind or other. If you can stop the Flash from running, then you've got a normal police scientist. The Green Lantern's ring won't work on anything yellow. Batman, in these issues, if you take his utility belt away, then you've got a normal man. Superman is vulnerable to kryptonite. Martian Manhunter is vulnerable to fire. Wonder Woman, though? Wonder Woman is seen throughout these early issues, keeping pace with everybody, including Superman. Easily ripping apart steel boards, steel walls, easily smashing through brick walls, doing things that even the Martian Manhunter can't entirely do, and not as easily. She's clearly portrayed as Superman's equal, and she has no weaknesses. So she a little bit tough. I like the fact that there's some of the sexism of the period. She is, of course, the Justice League of America's secretary. She keeps the notes, which she carves into a block of stone with her fingernail. So even there, she's doing it superhumanly. But it's well done, and you can see there you have what I'm talking about for Sekowski. There's basically no anatomy there. It's basically just colorful costumes, and really good, really welcome by me on that grounds. Now, another thing that you see in this panel, unfortunately, is that kid snapping his fingers. Now, if you watch Michael's video, you heard his very justified spleen against this character. The character is Snapper Carr. This was an era in which teen sidekicks were seen to be all the rage, which the 65-year-old Jewish men who were writing and producing the Justice League of America thought these hep-cat teenagers, we need to speak their language so they know we jive. It's all very leaden and very awful. And Snapper Carr is, unfortunately, the intrusion of that into these stories. He's just a teenage kid who snaps his fingers while he's talking. It's amazing to me that some member of the Justice League didn't mind wipe him or drop him into a volcano or something like that. I mean, who's going to stop them? And who could blame them? but they don't. Instead, they just put up with Snapper Carr forever and ever. But you also get these wonderful, look at that, planets of wonder. That's what you got in these early issues. You really got your 12 cents worth. And full color ads for all of the stuff that was coming out for DC Comics. And every month or every other month, you got these fantastic stories. You notice that although Atom and Green Arrow are on the covers, a lot of the time Superman and Batman are not. And that was a very real thing for the producers of these comics. It was a very real thing that they noticed, that this was a chance. They got letters from fans saying that this was a chance for these other heroes to get an extra comic, to get their day in the sun. Superman and Batman are still in every one of these issues. These early issues, these Mike Sekowski issues, they're still there. They just usually don't hog up space on the cover. Let me show you another cover here. I don't want to go on forever about Justice League. See, there you go. That's the Atom, but he's no longer small. He's huge. And the team has to deal with it. What is Aquaman thinking? Only the Atom can stop our rapid shrinking in size, but none of our danger signals are reaching him. See, so it's not the Atom that's huge. It's them. They are shrinking, and they can't even get his attention. And they are not shrinking. They are not shrinking past the subatomic particle level where they will be trapped forever and forced to eat each other, or any of the stuff that the latest coke-addicted British imports would write in Justice League today. Instead, it's just a fun story. It's just a fun story by a bunch of heroes who all trust each other, who are all on the same side, who never backbite each other, never even sass each other. Instead, obviously, the idea for the writers here and for the 15-year-olds reading this stuff was obviously Green Lantern and the Flash and Aquaman and Batman are all going to be on the same side. Obviously, they are going to be happy, cheerful, helpful teammates to each other. And the point will be, as Michael says in his video, the point will be the story. The point will be the plot. It won't be the personal conflicts. It won't be whether or not Nightwing and Starfire are going to sleep together before they marry. It won't be anything like that. As you might be able to discern from my comments, I preferred it that way. Very much so. I'll never see it back. Comic book, the mainstream comic book industry, Marvel and DC four-color superhero comics will end before it will ever change. And I don't think its end is far off. The people who own the gigantic corporate combines that put out these things couldn't care less about them. And readership has fallen off a cliff. So I don't think they're going to be around in their current state for much longer. Which, underscores another point that Michael made in his video, which is that it's really weird that DC Comics isn't upping their game here in terms of reprints. Because these reprints aren't going anywhere. Right? And the reprints will sell. they will always sell to the people that that love these issues. I want to show you a couple of. I don't know how late we're going uh, in our Silver Age Justice League. Probably we could revisit this a couple of times. But later on, there were some great Nick Cardy covers. Neil Adams also did a few covers as well. Uh, yeah, look at this. There's a great, for Earth to live, one of you must die. Look at that. That is just awesome. Just amazing. And Nick Cardy did a few classic keeper covers for the Justice League. There's one for the Phantom Stranger. At the stroke of midnight, I have come for one of you. These were very much worth the 20 cents that was paid for them at Tro's Dry Goods store. I don't know if we'll be getting those. Maybe Michael is going to break up the Silver Age of the Justice League. That would be great, because there's a lot of material here. But I don't think, by the time you get to those Nick Cardy covers, the inside is full of snappy personalities. Different personalities. And that just gets worse as time goes on. But for now, I can at least revisit these earlier issues in pure bliss and in a little bit more comfort for the wrist than those £5 omnibus editions that you see in Michael's video. I don't know what we'll be doing next week. I'm pretty sure that it won't be the Legion again. I would love it if it were. And I bet it won't be the Justice League either. We'll move on to something else after these team books. But we'll see. I'll be right along for it. I think we're going to stick with DC at least for the rest of the month. So I'm ready. To put it mildly, I'm ready. So I'll wrap this up for now. That is the Justice League, the Silver Age of the Justice League. These great old Gardner Fox adventures that are so much fun. And we'll reconvene next Wednesday and see what the world's finest comics duo has to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.